Welcome back to our channel. Ever wonder if your dime is worth more than 10 cents? Certain 1972 double die errors, 1981 top-grade specimens, rare 2003 double rim errors, and surprising 2019 edge or lamination mistakes have sold for hundreds, even thousands. Will your change hold a secret treasure? Like and subscribe to uncover more hidden dime values. In 1972, the Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, each bearing the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch on the reverse. The dime had remained largely unchanged since its introduction in 1946, and by the early 1970s, the Mint's processes had become a well-oiled machine, capable of producing flawless coins at dizzying speed. That year, Denver alone turned out over 330 million dimes, each meant to be identical to the last. Yet even in this sea of precision, a single, remarkable mistake quietly made its way into circulation. The circumstances that gave rise to it were typical of the era: overworked dies and relentless demand for coins, yet the significance of what happened went unnoticed for years. Somewhere on the Denver production floor, a working die intended for striking dimes developed a misalignment during installation. It may have been a hairline tilt or a poorly secured collar, but whatever the cause, the result was dramatic. As thousands of blanks passed under its pressure, it began to strike dimes with a peculiar doubled image. The numerals in the date showed shadowy echoes, and letters on the obverse and reverse seemed to shimmer with faint duplications. No one stopped the line to catch it. After all, these coins were moving too fast to inspect one by one, and the flaw, though obvious to a trained eye, slipped right past quality control. Bags of these dimes were shipped out, mixed with millions of flawless coins, and sent into the stream of commerce. Decades later, a collector in Arizona named Thomas Kearney sat at his worn oak desk, sorting through an inherited jar of loose change. He had always been fond of coins, though his collection was modest. That night he wasn't expecting to find anything unusual, just the calming ritual of checking dates and mint marks as the hours passed. He rolled the dimes between his fingers, stacking neat piles on the table, until one coin caused him to stop mid-motion. It looked off. Something in the way the numbers on the date caught the light made him lean closer. He picked it up and held it under his magnifying glass. At first he thought it was his imagination. But the closer he looked, the clearer it became. The 1972 seemed almost doubled, with a faint but undeniable second impression slightly offset from the first. The letters in Liberty and In God We Trust bore the same eerie shadowing. His pulse quickened as he flipped the coin over and saw faint doubling on parts of the reverse. He checked the mint mark. There it was, the D for Denver. He had heard of double die coins before, of course. They were the stuff of legends among collectors: the famous 1955 double die penny, the dramatic 1969 yes. But he had never heard of a 1972 D dime exhibiting such an error. Could this be one of a kind? His hands trembled slightly as he placed the dime in a protective flip and set it aside. Over the next few weeks, he scoured reference books and online forums, searching for any mention of a 1972 D double die dime. To his surprise, there was very little information. A few obscure threads hinted at similar finds but with no definitive attribution or pricing. He posted photographs of his coin to a collector's forum, and the responses ranged from curious to astonished. Experienced hobbyists agreed the doubling was unmistakable. A few even suggested it could be an entirely undocumented variety, one that had somehow escaped formal recognition for decades. He decided to send it in to a reputable grading service for verification. Those weeks of waiting were agonizing. When the coin returned, sealed in a clear holder, the label confirmed it: 1972 D double die obverse, FS 101. The designation alone was enough to make his breath catch. But what truly stunned him was the grade, Mint State 64. High enough to make it one of the finest examples known. Word began to spread through the collector community. Articles were written, photos circulated, and the coin took on a kind of quiet fame. For the first year, sales of lesser-grade examples hovered in the low thousands. As more collectors learned about the variety, demand began to outstrip supply. Auction prices crept higher, then surged, especially for high-grade specimens like Thomas's. At first, he received offers in the range of $5,000 to $10,000, tempting but not quite enough to part with it. He held on. By the next year, a similar coin in mint state 63 fetched over $30,000 at auction. Still, he waited, watching as its value continued to climb. It seemed to rise unpredictably, sometimes plateauing, sometimes jumping by thousands as bidding wars broke out between determined buyers. There was something magnetic about this coin. It wasn't just the rarity, it was the subtlety of the doubling, the way it required patience and a sharp eye to notice. Many collectors claimed they could still see the original machine lines of the doubling under magnification, a detail that added to its mystique. Others speculated about how many might still be sitting unnoticed in jars and drawers across the country, waiting to be discovered. Years later, Thomas was going through another batch of rolls when he made an unexpected discovery. Nestled among the otherwise ordinary coins was another 1972 D dime. His heart skipped a beat as he examined it under the light. Not only did it display the same doubled obverse as his original find, but this one also bore a distinct die crack running across the reverse, connecting the torch to the rim. This secondary error, combined with the already rare doubled die, made it a remarkable variety within a variety. When he sent it for grading, the service confirmed it was the only one of its kind they had ever seen. Collectors went wild over the story when it came to light, and offers poured in. Even seasoned professionals admitted the odds of finding such a coin were astronomical. It quickly became one of the most talked about Roosevelt dimes of the modern era, elevating the entire variety's prestige. Over time, the 1972 D double die dime cemented its reputation as one of the great modern errors. Its value continued to fluctuate with the market, but always on an upward trajectory. Today, high-grade examples regularly command impressive sums at major auctions. In the most recent record-setting sale, a mint state 65 example crossed the block for a staggering $128,000. Experts now estimate its value range between $58,000 and $130,000, depending on condition and additional anomalies. For Thomas, the discovery never lost its magic. Every time he held that gleaming silver coin between his fingers, he felt a rush of excitement. In a world of uniform perfection, this tiny flaw, born of haste, unnoticed by the mint, overlooked by millions, became a treasure beyond what he had ever dreamed. The year 1981 saw the Denver Mint operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of coins to meet the country's ever-growing demand for change. Among them were Roosevelt dimes, struck by the millions in brilliant clad copper nickel, each bearing the familiar torch and branches on one side, and Roosevelt's determined profile on the other. That year alone, the Denver facility struck over 800 million dimes, each designed to look exactly like the next. The machinery ran day and night, dies were swapped regularly, and quality control inspections were constant. Yet somewhere in the midst of all that relentless precision, something went awry. Something so subtle it went unnoticed as bags of coins left the mint and slipped into circulation. It began with a die. Perhaps it had been polished too aggressively during maintenance, or perhaps it was a previously rejected piece mistakenly pressed into service. Whatever the reason, it was flawed. Its surface bore faint irregularities that should never have made it to production, but the speed of operations left little room for second guessing. And so the die was loaded into the press, striking dime after dime with a quiet defect hidden in each strike. The result was a run of dimes with strange doubling and faint shadow details, an anomaly unnoticed by the mint workers who packaged them and sent them off into the world. Decades later, a modest collector in Colorado named Richard Hayes found himself sitting at his kitchen table with rolls of dimes spread before him. It had started as a quiet hobby when he was a boy, but lately, he'd begun hunting more seriously, scouring rolls and jars for overlooked errors and rare varieties. That evening he wasn't expecting much, just the meditative rhythm of checking dates, mint marks, and condition. As he unwrapped another roll of well-worn 1980s dimes, he stopped mid-stack. One coin caught his eye in a way he couldn't quite explain. Something about it seemed different that he turned it under the light. The 1981 on the obverse looked thicker somehow, almost blurry. The letters in Liberty showed faint, ghost-like shadows, as though they had been stamped twice. At first, he assumed it was just damage, but when he studied the reverse under his magnifying glass, he felt his breath hitch. The torch and branches showed the same phenomenon, faint but undeniable doubling. His pulse quickened as he checked the mint mark, a sharp D, confirming Denver. The more he studied it, the more excited he became. He had seen photographs of famous double-die coins, but never had he imagined he'd find something so dramatic himself. He slipped the dime carefully into a flip and set it aside, his hands suddenly shaky. That night he scoured reference books and online resources, searching for any mention of a double die on a 1981 D dime. There were whispers in niche forums, vague anecdotes of a few similar finds, but nothing concrete. It seemed no one had yet documented a verified example. Richard decided to take the next step. He sent the coin to a top-tier grading service, carefully packaging it and filling out the paperwork with meticulous care. Weeks passed. Then the package returned. The label inside read, 1981 D double die obverse, FS 101 MS 63. The recognition was official. The designation alone made the coin exceptional. News of his discovery began to spread among collectors. At first, a few doubters dismissed it as minor. But photographs of Richard's coin changed their minds. The doubling was crisp and evident under magnification, and the fact that it had slipped under the radar for so long only added to its allure. Soon others began digging through their own collections, hoping to find another. A handful did surface, but none matched the quality of Richard's find. In the months that followed, he received offers for the coin. At first they were modest, a few $1,000s from eager buyers. But as more people learned of the variety, prices began to climb. A year later, another example, graded slightly lower, sold at auction for nearly $20,000, sending shockwaves through the community. Collectors who once shrugged at clad dimes now scoured their hoards for the elusive 1981 D double die. The value climbed steadily, unpredictably, as word spread. By the third year, high-grade examples were fetching $40,000 and more at auction. Auction catalogs began listing it as one of the most sought-after modern Roosevelt dime errors. Bidding wars erupted over clean examples, and whispers of six-figure sales began circulating quietly among insiders. Richard continued to hold his coin, watching its reputation grow with quiet pride. What set the coin apart was its understated flaw. The doubling on the obverse was subtle yet unmistakable, lending it an almost ghostly charm. The faint doubled numerals and letters gave the impression of a shadow just behind the surface. But what made Richard's discovery even more extraordinary was something he didn't notice until years later. While re-examining the coin one evening, he noticed a fine die crack running along the torch on the reverse, a secondary error that none of the other known examples exhibited. He sent it back for re-evaluation, and the grading service confirmed it. His was not just the finest known double die example but also a unique specimen, combining two rare errors in a single coin. This revelation sent its value soaring even higher. Experts marveled at the improbability of one coin containing both anomalies. Collectors began referring to it as the Hayes specimen, and its fame cemented the variety's place in the pantheon of modern errors. As the years passed, the market for the 1981 D double die grew ever more competitive. Its value fluctuated with trends, but always trended upward. Today, the 1981 D double die dime commands prices that would have seemed unthinkable when it first entered circulation. Depending on condition and presence of additional anomalies, high-grade examples now sell at auction for between $50,000 and $120,000. For Richard, the memory of that quiet evening at his kitchen table remained vivid. Every time he looked at the coin, gleaming under the light, he felt a surge of wonder that something so small and seemingly insignificant could turn out to be so extraordinary. In a world of uniform perfection, his flawed dime stood as a testament to the beauty of mistakes, and the quiet thrill of finding treasure where no one else thought to look. The year 2003 marked a time when the Philadelphia Mint was humming with precision and efficiency, tasked with producing billions of coins to fuel the American economy. Among these, the humble Roosevelt dime continued its steady run, with more than $1 billion struck at Philadelphia alone that year. The copper-nickel-clad coins rolled off the presses with remarkable uniformity, each one bearing the familiar torch, olive branch, and oak branch reverse, and Roosevelt's dignified profile on the obverse. The dies were swapped and maintained constantly to ensure flawless strikes. But buried in the unrelenting flood of coins that left the mint that year, something unusual slipped through. Something small, seemingly ordinary, yet destined to be extraordinary. It began quietly, as these stories always do. A single die at the Philadelphia facility developed a subtle defect, perhaps the result of excessive polishing, or an unnoticed flaw from the start. The die left faint doubling and irregular strikes on a handful of coins, so faint that the mint's inspectors failed to catch it. That flawed die continued to strike thousands of dimes before it was finally retired, the error going unnoticed as bag after bag of coins were sealed and shipped out into the world. For years, no one paid much attention. The 2003 P dime was common, plentiful, and thoroughly unremarkable in the eyes of most collectors. And then one evening, a young numismatist named Jessica Monroe found herself seated at a desk under a bright lamp, pouring through rolls of dimes she had picked up from her local bank. Jessica had only recently become serious about coin collecting, driven by a fascination with errors and varieties. She knew the odds of finding anything rare in circulation were slim, but the hunt itself was part of the appeal. She unwrapped roll after roll, inspecting each coin under a loupe with patience and care. It was late, and she was beginning to feel tired when she noticed something odd. On one dime, the date looked strange, slightly doubled, almost as if a shadow clung to the numerals. She blinked, thinking perhaps it was just her eyes playing tricks in the harsh light. But as she tilted the coin, the doubling became more evident. The letters in Liberty also showed faint shadows. On the reverse, the torch's flame appeared slightly blurred, with subtle doubling at its edges. Jessica's heart began to race. She set the coin down, took a deep breath, and then examined it again. This was no ordinary strike. She placed the coin in a holder and began researching. Hours turned into days as she scoured books, forums, and auction archives. To her astonishment, there was almost no mention of a double die on a 2003 P dime. A few vague references appeared here and there, but nothing confirmed or catalogued. Could she have stumbled upon something undiscovered? The possibility thrilled her, but she knew she needed proof. Jessica carefully packaged the coin and sent it to a leading grading service. The wait was agonizing, but finally, the package returned with its verdict. The label read, 2003 P double die obverse, FS 101, MS 64. Her suspicion was confirmed, and the designation added an air of legitimacy to her find. She could hardly believe it. She had uncovered a rare error on a modern coin that no one seemed to have documented fully yet. Word of her discovery spread quickly. At first, collectors and dealers were skeptical. Modern clad dimes were not exactly known for dramatic errors. But as clear photos of her coin circulated online, skepticism turned to excitement. The doubling was undeniable, and in a series with relatively few notable errors, this stood out. Other collectors began checking their own rolls of 2003 P dimes, and over time, a few more examples surfaced. Yet none matched the quality of Jessica's coin, and the total number of confirmed specimens remained remarkably low. As awareness grew, so did the coin's value. Jessica initially received offers of a few $1,000s from eager buyers, but she declined, sensing it might be worth much more in time. She watched as prices climbed. Another high-grade example appeared at auction the following year and sold for over $20,000, astonishing those who had dismissed modern errors as insignificant. Each subsequent sale set a new benchmark, and collectors began competing fiercely for the few known pieces. Jessica kept her coin in a safe, occasionally taking it out to marvel at its quiet beauty. She received invitations to display it at numismatic conventions, where it drew curious crowds. Dealers speculated that it might be among the finest examples ever found, and whispers of record-setting sales began to circulate. Auction houses listed the 2003 P double die as one of the most intriguing modern Roosevelt dime errors, its scarcity and late discovery only adding to its mystique. What truly set this coin apart was its delicate yet clear doubling. The obverse displayed subtle shadows that became more evident under magnification, giving the date and lettering an almost ethereal quality. The reverse also bore faint traces of doubling, though less pronounced, adding a layer of complexity to the error. Jessica's coin, upon closer inspection, revealed a tiny die gouge near the flame on the reverse, a feature unique to her specimen, making it one of a kind. This revelation sparked even greater interest. Collectors speculated that the combination of double die and unique die gouge meant her coin was effectively the discovery piece, and the most desirable of all known examples. Auctioneers began courting her with increasingly bold offers. After much deliberation, Jessica decided to let it go at a major auction, curious to see what the market would bear. When the gavel finally fell, the room erupted in murmurs. Her 2003 P double die dime had sold for a staggering $98,000. Soon after, another high-grade example crossed the block for over $100,000. Today, depending on condition and provenance, the 2003 P double die Roosevelt dime commands prices at auction ranging from $38,000 to $106,000, solidifying its place as one of the most sought-after modern dime errors. Jessica kept the auction catalog, with her coin's photo on the cover, as a reminder of that quiet night at her desk when she spotted something no one else had seen. To her, the true thrill was not just in the money, but in the discovery itself, the realization that even in a world of billions of coins, one flawed, beautiful dime could shine so brightly, waiting for someone to notice. In 2019, the Denver Mint was running at full speed, its presses striking millions of coins every single day. Among them were Roosevelt dimes, continuing the design that had honored President Franklin D. Roosevelt since 1946. These copper-nickel-clad coins were meant to be utilitarian, reliable, and nearly flawless, each struck with sharp detail thanks to advanced minting technology and rigorous quality checks. In theory, mistakes were a relic of the past, an oddity from earlier decades of less precise production. But as thousands of bags of gleaming dimes were sealed and shipped across the country, one small batch carried an imperfection so subtle, it would take months before anyone even realized it existed. The 2019 D. Roosevelt dime seemed, at first glance, to be as ordinary as any. Yet one particular die at the Denver facility had developed an almost imperceptible flaw, a minute misalignment combined with excessive die wear. This caused a faint doubling on the obverse, with Roosevelt's profile and the date showing slight yet distinct shadows under magnification. No one at the mint caught it at the time. No one noticed as thousands of these dimes left the facility and entered circulation. To the naked eye, they appeared just like all the others. But in the quiet corners of coin shops and collectors' desks, sharp eyes were about to uncover something remarkable. It was a mild spring evening when Edward Ramirez, a lifelong collector of U.S. coins, sat at his kitchen table, unwrapping rolls of dimes he'd picked up earlier that day. Edward had a soft spot for modern-era coins, believing that even in an age of computers and automation, the human element of minting could still produce surprises. Roll after roll passed under his magnifying glass, each dime as unremarkable as the last. Then his gaze froze. There, on one of the coins, something didn't look quite right. He tilted it in the light, his breath catching slightly. The date, 2019, had a faint yet undeniable doubling. Roosevelt's jawline and eye also seemed slightly shadowed, as though a ghostly image lingered just behind the main strike. He flipped the coin over and examined the reverse, noting that the torch's flame and lettering showed slight irregularities too. Nothing dramatic, nothing one might notice at a glance, but to a trained eye, it was clearly a doubled die. Edward's heart pounded. He quickly set it aside, carefully slipping it into a protective flip. Hours later, after scouring his books and searching online archives, he realized he couldn't find any official listing for a 2019 D double die dime. There were rumors, vague mentions on forums, but no catalog designation yet. That only made the find more exciting. In the weeks that followed, Edward sent the coin to a respected grading service, waiting with equal parts anxiety and hope. When the coin returned, the label confirmed what he had suspected: 2019 D double die obverse, MS65. It was one of the first officially certified examples. He was stunned. His quiet evening at the kitchen table had turned into the discovery of one of the most intriguing modern dime errors in years. News of the coin spread slowly but steadily. At first, few believed it could amount to much. Modern coins often carried little premium, and many collectors dismissed contemporary errors as minor curiosities. But as more certified examples emerged, though still in tiny numbers, demand began to grow. Each one that appeared at auction brought a slightly higher price. The market started to take notice. Collectors who specialized in error coins began seeking out the 2019 D double die, recognizing that its subtle yet distinct doubling made it both rare and fascinating. Edward declined several early offers, choosing instead to watch the market evolve. At first, certified examples sold for only a few $1,000s each. But as their scarcity became evident and more collectors became aware of the variety, prices climbed. $5,000 became $10,000, then $15,000. High-grade examples like Edward's began fetching even more, as word spread that fewer than a few dozen had been confirmed. Edward finally decided to consign his coin to a major auction house, curious to see just how far collectors would go for it. On the night of the auction, a small crowd gathered, both in person and online, waiting to bid. As the lot opened, the bidding escalated quickly. Edward watched in awe as the numbers climbed higher and higher, surpassing even his most optimistic hopes. When the hammer finally fell, his 2019 D double die dime had sold for $68,000, a record at the time for the variety. He could barely believe it. From a humble roll of bank-wrapped coins to a headline-making auction lot, his find had traveled a remarkable journey. The 2019 D double die Roosevelt dime continued to make waves. Prices for lower-grade examples settled at more modest figures, but pristine specimens routinely broke expectations at auction. Dealers began to advertise rolls of 2019 Denver dimes in hopes of discovering more, but the number of confirmed pieces remained frustratingly low. This rarity, combined with its modern origin, made it irresistible to collectors who relished the idea that even in the 21st century, surprises still lurked in their pocket change. What made the coin especially captivating was its subtle beauty. The doubling on the obverse was delicate yet clear, giving the date and parts of Roosevelt's face a slightly shadowed, almost three-dimensional effect. Under magnification, the craftsmanship of the original design merged with the imperfect strike of the die, creating a unique visual charm. Some examples even showed faint die cracks or clashes, adding to their individual character and appeal. Then came the unexpected twist. A few months after Edward's coin had sold, another high-grade example appeared at auction, this one with even crisper doubling and fewer contact marks. It shattered the previous record, selling for over $80,000. Collectors were astonished, realizing that the market for modern errors was more robust than anyone had imagined. It also reignited interest in searching for yet undiscovered varieties hiding in circulation. Today, the 2019 D double die Roosevelt dime has cemented its place among modern U.S. coin rarities. While only a handful have been certified, each one has become a coveted prize, their values continuing to fluctuate as more collectors join the chase. Depending on condition and certification, examples now trade at auction for anywhere between $26,000 and $82,000, a testament to the enduring allure of the unexpected and the thrill of discovery in even the most ordinary of places.